AITA for exposing my brother at his own wedding after finding out he had been stealing from our parents for 4 years. My name is Jessica. I am 32 years old. I live in Denver, Colorado. And 14 months ago I stood up at my brother's wedding reception in front of 120 people and said something that ended the evening, ended my relationship with my brother, and divided my family in a way that has not fully healed, and that I am still deciding whether I regret. My brother's name is Tyler. He had been stealing from our parents for 4 years. Not borrowing, stealing. Taking money from their accounts through access he had been given to help them manage bills online, and redirecting it to his own account in amounts small enough to avoid triggering automatic alerts, but consistent enough that over 4 years it totaled approximately $78,000. I had found out 3 weeks before his wedding through our parents' accountant, who had noticed the pattern during an annual review and had brought it to me because our parents were 71 and 68, and the accountant had not wanted to deliver the information to them alone. I spent 3 weeks deciding what to do. I went to an attorney. I documented everything the accountant had found. I confirmed the pattern independently through records my parents gave me access to when I told them I was helping with a financial review. My parents did not know yet. I had been trying to decide how to tell them, and when and whether the wedding, 3 weeks away, changed the calculation. I decided it did not change it, but I was wrong about that in a specific way I will explain. I told my parents the week before the wedding. My mother cried for 2 days. My father went quiet in a way I had not seen from him before. They asked me what they should do. I told them that was their decision, and that I would support whatever they decided. What they decided was that they did not want to ruin Tyler's wedding, and that they would address it after. I agreed to that. The wedding happened. The ceremony was fine. The reception dinner was fine. Tyler gave a toast thanking our parents for everything they had done for him over the years, and I sat at my table, and I listened to my brother thank our parents for their generosity, while knowing that he had been taking their money for 4 years, and I felt something that I still cannot fully name, but that produced the decision I made approximately 30 seconds after his toast ended. I stood up. I gave a toast of my own. I said I also wanted to thank our parents for everything they had given our family over the years, and that I hoped Tyler understood the full extent of what they had sacrificed for him. I said it clearly, and I said it looking at Tyler, and Tyler went white in the way of someone who has just understood that someone knows. 120 people looked at me and then at Tyler, and then back at me, and the room understood that something had happened that was not a normal wedding toast, even if they did not know specifically what. My parents looked at me from across the room with an expression I could not read. Tyler's new wife looked at him with a question on her face that he did not answer. I sat down. The evening did not recover. Tyler confronted me in the parking lot afterward, and denied everything and said I had ruined his wedding. I told him he had been taking money from our parents for 4 years, and that his wedding was the least of what had been ruined. My parents were angry with me, not for telling them, for the timing and the method. They said they had asked me to wait, and I had agreed, and then had not waited. They were right. I had agreed and then had not been able to sit through his toast and stay quiet, and I had made a choice in 30 seconds that I had not fully thought through. The legal process resulted in Tyler making restitution to our parents over 18 months. Tyler and I have not spoken since the parking lot. My parents have forgiven me and have forgiven Tyler in the specific incomplete way of parents who love their children regardless of what their children do. I am still deciding whether what I did was right. I think the information needed to be said. I think the wedding was the wrong place to say it. Update 4 months later. My mother called me last month and said Tyler had made his final restitution payment. She said she was glad it was done, and that she was tired, and that she wanted to move forward. She asked if I would come for dinner when Tyler was there. I told her I needed more time. She said she understood, and that the dinner would be there when I was ready. I am not ready yet. I think ready will come, and I think it will take longer than my mother would like, and I think that is honest, and that honest is the right place to be even when it is not the comfortable one. AITA for not telling my husband his best friend had been lying to him for 10 years. Until the lie affected me directly. My name is Carol. I am 38 years old. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and 11 months ago I told my husband something about his best friend of 20 years that I had known for 3 years, and had not told him because the knowing had not been mine to share until it became something I was directly affected by. My husband's name is David. His best friend's name is Marcus. David and Marcus had been friends since college, and had the specific closeness of people who have known each other through the formation of their adult identities, and who carry a shared history that I had always respected even when Marcus had sometimes been difficult to be around. The thing I had known for 3 years was that Marcus had not graduated from college. David believed Marcus had a degree. Marcus had built his entire professional and social identity around a credential he did not have, and had been maintaining this fiction for 20 years with everyone in his life, including David, who had attended the same university, and who believed he had watched Marcus graduate. I had found out 3 years earlier through Marcus's sister, who had mentioned it casually at a gathering, not knowing I did not already know. I had said nothing to David because it was Marcus's information to share, and because it did not affect me directly, and because David's friendship with Marcus was real and valuable regardless of a credential. It became my business when Marcus recommended my husband for a position at his company by vouching for him, as someone with a specific professional background that my husband had. And when that vouching led to a hiring process that included a reference check that included Marcus, and in which Marcus made statements about David that were based on a professional context that Marcus did not actually have the expertise to credibly evaluate, David did not get the position. The feedback he received suggested his references had not been as strong as expected. I sat with that information, and I understood that Marcus's fictional credential had created a situation in which his vouching for David had been evaluated against a professional standard he did not meet, and had probably undermined David's application in ways neither of them had known were happening. I told David. I told him about the credential first, and then I told him about what I understood had happened with the job application. David was quiet for a very long time. Then he asked me how long I had known. I told him 3 years. He asked why I had not told him sooner. I told him what I had told myself, that it had not been my information to share, that it had not affected him directly, that his friendship with Marcus was real regardless. He sat with that for a week. His conversation with Marcus happened at the end of that week, and I was not present for it. What I know is that Marcus confirmed the credential had been fictional for 20 years, and that the friendship between them is in a different place than it was before that conversation. Not ended, but renegotiated in the specific way of relationships that have absorbed a significant dishonesty and are figuring out what they contain on the other side of it. David has not fully resolved how he feels about my 3 years of knowing. I understand that, and I am in it with him. Our therapist says I made a defensible choice that had real costs, and that understanding both of those things simultaneously is the work. I think she is right. Update, 3 months later. David and Marcus had dinner last month. The first time since the conversation. David told me it had been difficult and honest, and that he did not know what the friendship was now, but that he had not been willing to end it without trying to understand what was left. I told him I thought trying was the right thing. He said he was glad I had told him even though 3 years was a long time to have known. I said I knew and that I had made the best decision I had been able to make with what I had understood at the time, and that the decision I had made at the end had also been the best available. He said he thought that was probably right. We had dinner and talked about other things, and I thought about Marcus and about 20 years of a fictional credential, and about 3 years of knowing, and about the specific cost of information, and who bears it, and I did not arrive at a clean answer, but I arrived at a place I could live with, and I think that is sometimes the most honest available destination. My in-laws the real reason I cannot attend family events. My husband had been making excuses for me for 3 years. My name is Laura. I am 34 years old. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and 8 months ago I attended a family dinner at my in-laws' house, and answered a question about why I had missed so many family events over the past 3 years with an honesty that my husband had specifically asked me not to deploy, and that produced a conversation that has permanently changed the landscape of our marriage and my relationship with his family. My husband's name is James. His parents are Robert and Patricia, and they are 67 and 64. And they are warm people who had genuinely wanted a relationship with me and who had been receiving, for 3 years, a series of excuses from James about why I could not attend various family events. The excuses had been James's invention. I had not asked him to make them. The reason I had been unable to attend many family events over the past 3 years was a health condition. An autoimmune condition that had been diagnosed 3 years earlier, and that had required significant treatment and management, and that had made certain kinds of gatherings difficult in ways that were real, and that I had been willing to explain honestly. James had decided without discussing it with me that he did not want his family to know about my health condition because he had believed, incorrectly and without asking me, that I would not want them to know. He had been protecting a privacy I had not asked him to protect at the cost of a relationship I had been trying to build. 3 years of his family believing I was unreliable, uninterested, or difficult when I had been sick, and would have preferred they know. The dinner where I answered honestly arrived because Patricia asked me directly, looking me in the eyes across a dinner table, whether everything was okay, and whether I wanted to be part of this family, or whether the absences meant something she should understand differently. I told her the truth. I told her about the diagnosis and the treatment, and the specific ways certain gatherings had been difficult, and that I had been willing to explain this for 3 years, and had not known James had been giving other explanations. Patricia's face went through several things. Then she reached across the table and held my hand and said she was sorry she had not known, and that she wished she had known sooner. James was sitting next to me and he went very still. Robert looked at his son and said nothing, but the looking said something. The car ride home was the most significant conversation James and I have had in 5 years of marriage. James said he had been trying to protect me. I told him he had been making a decision about my own information without asking me, and that the protection had cost me 3 years of his family believing things about me that were not true. He said he understood, and that he had not thought about it that way. I told him I needed him to ask me before he decided what information about my life was mine to share, because it was always mine to share, and the decision was always mine to make. James has told me 3 times in the 8 months since that dinner that he is sorry. I believe him each time. The relationship with his parents is different now, warmer and more honest, and built on accurate information about who I am and what my life has contained. Patricia calls me every 2 weeks. She asks about my health with the specific attention of someone who now understands why it matters to ask. I think about the dinner sometimes, and about 3 years of excuses I did not know were being made, and about Patricia's hand across the table. And I think that honesty arrived late, but arrived exactly when I was ready to receive it. Update 4 months later. Patricia came to sit with me at a medical appointment last month. James had a conflict and she offered, and I said yes because saying yes felt right, and because I wanted to. We sat in the waiting room together for 2 hours, and we talked about things that had nothing to do with medicine, and everything to do with 2 people who had been kept from knowing each other for 3 years, and were making up for it now. On the drive home, she said she was glad she knew now. I said I was glad she knew too. She said she wished she had known sooner. I said so did I. We had the same conversation in 2 sentences, and I thought that sometimes the most important conversations are the ones you can have in 2 sentences, because you already understand each other well enough to need only 2. My colleague the truth about why she was passed over for promotion. HR asked me to keep it confidential. My name is Daniel. I am 43 years old. I live in Seattle, Washington, and 16 months ago I made a decision that my HR department considered a serious breach of confidentiality, and that my conscience considered the only available honest option. And I have spent 16 months sitting with both of those assessments simultaneously. My colleague's name is Sandra. We had worked in the same department for 6 years, and I considered her a genuine professional friend, someone I respected and whose work I had always found excellent. Sandra had been passed over for a promotion she had been working toward for 2 years. She had been told by HR that the decision had been based on performance metrics, and had been given feedback that was vague and did not reflect my understanding of her actual performance, which had been strong. I had been on the promotion committee. I knew the real reason Sandra had not been promoted. The real reason was not performance metrics. The real reason was that one of the 3 committee members, a senior manager named Craig, had made comments during the committee discussion about Sandra's future availability that were clearly related to her recent marriage, and a comment she had made at a company event about wanting to start a family. The comments were not framed explicitly as discriminatory, but their substance and their effect on the committee's discussion were clear to me, and I had said so in the meeting, and had been outvoted, and had then been asked by HR, who had heard that the meeting had been contentious, to keep the details of the committee discussion confidential as part of the standard process. I had agreed to that, and then I had watched Sandra receive feedback that did not address the real reason, and that would leave her unable to challenge the actual basis of the decision. I told her. Not dramatically. I met her for coffee outside the office, and I told her what had happened in the committee meeting, and what Craig had said, and what effect it had had on the outcome. I told her I was breaching a confidentiality agreement by telling her, and that she should know that, and that I was telling her anyway because she had a right to the accurate information about a decision that affected her career. Sandra retained an employment attorney. The investigation that followed took 4 months, and was significantly more thorough than the original promotion process. Craig was placed on administrative leave, and subsequently resigned. Sandra received the promotion. I received a formal reprimand for the confidentiality breach and a note in my personnel file. I understood both the reprimand and the promotion as appropriate outcomes of the same decision. My HR department's position was that confidentiality processes exist for reasons, and that breaching them has costs even when the breach serves a good purpose. I agree with this in principle. I also believe that confidentiality processes should not be used to shield discriminatory decision-making from the person it affects, and that when they are the person they affect has a right to know. Both of those things are true simultaneously, and I have been sitting with both of them for 16 months. Sandra and I still have coffee regularly. She has been in the promoted role for 14 months and is excellent at it. She told me recently that she had thought about what I had done, and that she wanted me to know it had changed the direction of her career. I told her she had done that by pursuing it, and that I had only made sure she had the information she needed to pursue it accurately. She said that was a very lawyerly way of taking no credit. I said I had been spending too much time around her attorney. Update 3 months later. The formal reprimand came up in my annual review last month. My new manager, Craig's replacement, reviewed it and said she had read the full file and understood the context, and that she wanted me to know she did not consider it a reflection of my professional character. I thanked her and said I had made the best decision I had been able to make with what I understood at the time. She said she thought so too, and that the file would remain because processes mattered, and that she hoped I also understood that. I said I did. We moved on to the rest of the review. Sandra sent me a message that evening. She had heard through the grapevine that my review had gone well, and said she was glad. I said so was I. She said she owed me a coffee. I said she had been buying them for 14 months, and that we were even. She said we were not even, and that we never would be, and that she was okay with that. I said I thought that was probably the right way to hold it. My sister, the money our mother left me. She said Mom would have wanted us to split it. My name is Michelle. I am 41 years old. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. And 2 years ago my mother passed away and left me $47,000, and left my sister nothing, and I declined to split the money with my sister, and have spent 2 years being called selfish and cruel by my sister and certain members of my extended family, and have also spent 2 years being completely certain I made the right decision. She was 73 years old, and she had been clear-eyed and intentional in the last years of her life about her decisions in a way that I had always respected. My sister's name is Diane. She is 44 years old, and she and my mother had a relationship that had been difficult for 20 years. Not estranged, not broken, but consistently characterized by Diane doing things that hurt my mother, and my mother absorbing those things and continuing to love Diane and continuing to be hurt by her. The $47,000 was money my mother had specifically saved and specifically directed to me in a will that she had written and updated twice in the last 5 years of her life. The will was clear. The attorney was clear. My mother had left Diane a personal letter and a piece of jewelry and had left me the money. And I believe she had done both of those things deliberately and for reasons that were hers to make. Diane called me the day after the will reading and told me our mother would have wanted us to split it equally. I told Diane I did not believe that was true, and that if it had been true, our mother, who was a deliberate and thoughtful woman, would have written a will that said so. Diane said I was being literal and cold, and that family came before money. I told Diane that the decision had been our mother's, and that honoring our mother's decision was what I was doing, and that substituting Diane's interpretation of what our mother would have wanted for what our mother had actually written felt like the less respectful option. Diane said things after that which I will not repeat here, but that told me the conversation was not going to arrive at a productive place that day. My extended family divided. Some of them agreed with me. Some of them said I should split it because it was the kind thing to do. One aunt told me repeatedly that money was not worth a relationship. I told her I agreed, and that the relationship would be available to Diane without the money on whatever terms she was willing to meet it on. Diane has not met it on any terms for 2 years. She has maintained that I owe her half of $47,000, and I have maintained that I do not, and that my mother made a decision that I am not going to overrule because Diane finds it inconvenient. The money is in savings. I have thought about what to do with it in ways that honor my mother rather than just holding it, and I am working toward that. One possibility I have been considering is something in my mother's name. A small fund or contribution to something she believed in. I have not decided yet. I think the deciding deserves the same care my mother put into the giving. Update: 4 months later. Diane called me last month. Not about the money, about something else, a family matter involving our aunt's health that required coordination. We spoke for 20 minutes about the practical matter and handled it together, and the handling was functional and not warm. And when we hung up, I sat for a moment thinking about 20 minutes of functional and not warm, and about what that was the beginning of or the continuation of or neither. I have decided to make a contribution to a literacy program my mother had volunteered with for 10 years. The contribution will be in her name. I called the program director and told her about my mother, and about what she had contributed there, and the director said Barbara had been one of their most dedicated volunteers, and that a contribution in her name would be meaningful to them. I said I thought it would be meaningful to her too. I made the contribution. I sat afterward, and I thought about my mother writing a will twice in 5 years, and about what she had understood about her daughters, and about what she had decided, and I thought that honoring a decision someone made carefully is one of the better things you can do for someone who is gone, and that I had.